My name is Waithera. I'm a human rights activist, an economic rights activist, a culturalist. I'm a writer, I'm a content producer, I'm a digital security trainer, and a community leader, and an African youthful voice. And you're watching Reality Check. And I'm an activist. At least nowadays I'm comfortable of identifying with the name. There's also another name we go by, we're called the Human Rights Defenders. I'm from Kayole. I've lived there for since 2007. Not born in Nairobi, but I found myself in Nairobi. I come from a family from my paternal side of Mau Mau people. That is my grandfather, who we buried 3 years ago. And on the other side, now of course, my other bigger family where I grew up, my mom's side, the inspiration into leadership, the inspiration into being a community person, a person who just loves justice, I think is what brought me into activism. I've trained as a journalist, a broadcast journalist. I have a BA in arts journalism. And I think in our today world, my story is like any other youth out there with papers that limited employment chances and also a youth badge of unemployed persons and limited jobs. Something I love to call neoliberalism, the effects of neoliberalism today. But besides not being employed in the formal in the formal journalism world, I'm a content producer. Being a content producer, I work again within the organizing sector in human rights activism in Kenya. I'm a bit of an influential person. I love to take my titles with a bit of humility. I'm an influential leader in Africa and a youthful voice in Africa. I am a member of African Youth Movement. Yes, and just talk about everything: youth, governance, human rights, and empowering the present day generation. Well, I didn't always start at the streets. That is one thing I love to affirm and also take note of. And I love Kenyans to take note of that as well. Well, I was studying for journalism. I didn't start as a journalist, by the way. I found myself as a teen mother in Kayole. At 19, I became a mother. So since I'm this much of a loud person on the mind than outspoken, I'm quite of an observer. I looked around in Matopeni. Matopeni is the word I come from, and I thought I have the privilege of education, which I can't see around, because even in the ways I used to express myself was too much of English, again given the background and the educative background I've gotten from my family. So that challenged me. Or rather, I think it was just a teen growing and wanting to see something different. So I started just interacting with youth. I wanted to study music. And then I missed that chance because I became a mother at that age. And of course now I lost the university chance to join universities through the admissions board. So I stayed at home. I did music, I did teaching. I used to teach somewhere in Thika East as an untrained teacher. I also trained for piano for 6 months, and my family could not allow me to do music. At least my mom was not that supportive. So when time came and my family agreed, hey, it's time for her to go back to school because she performed quite well. I thought, let me go do something that complements me. And that is, if it's not going to be music, it's going to be something that I've always said I want to be. That is a journalist. So being that I was starting out as a youth leader in Matopeni, or I was just quite visible in Matopeni, Kenyans say I'm brave and I'm quite bold now, even I express myself. I think I just stood out. In university, after the first year, second year, first semester, I remember I was nominated for a role, a leadership role, without necessarily being there for the nomination. You just know you're at home, you're breastfeeding, and then you go a bit later than others. There was a meeting yesterday, or you didn't have classes on that day, and students tell you, know what, we have chosen you to be our student representative, female representative for the Congress. So it was more of standing out as a leader and being very bold and starting groups here and there in Matopeni, and all elevating my peers. So I didn't start alone. We started with a number of girls. Well, I love to call them young girls who are trying just to be people who are just trying to make Mtaa better. So it was for me a learning opportunity to learn how like ghetto life is. It's not really ghetto, but it's not also really uptown. So to also learn the street life in what sense? You learn to speak Sheng. You learn to know, hey, this is how you walk around this area, otherwise this could happen. And then again, hey, you know what, you're a mom, so you have to learn to survive. So I did hawking even before I could finish campus. I did a lot of bidding work. So, but the constant desire to just inspire people, I think, is what got me there. In the newsroom, I practiced at Inoro TV. We were the first batch of interns there. And I also practiced again in KTN. And besides practicing, there's that love for writing. And I love telling stories in whatever form, whether it's by mouth or it's by writing. So I had some kind of interest on hard stories like investigative pieces or soft stories, the type that gear towards human interests. So just being an empath and then the next minute do one feature, another one, and then the next minute I can no longer get back into the newsroom because I've applied enough and I can't get that job or haven't gotten that job. So after leaving KTN in 2017, after practicing, I went back to Matopeni, and that's where I went and revived my old projects. That is, one of them was a tennis project for girls, exposure for girls. Revived those groups and we started living life, seeing things that are happening, and also the exposure on TV, being seen on TV, reporting or just writing or being able to express quite well on the internet as a citizen journalist. These were things I used to just do. I had my first blog in my first year in campus, or I think a year before campus. I used to do commentaries for DN on the cutting edge segment when I was still quite young, I think about 19 or 20. So that's just it. I just found myself on this other side. In 2017, I still do writing, by the way, but writing that does not go now to the mainstream media kind of content. I discovered that in 2017, after spending a whole year now, a whole 8 months after leaving the newsroom, because of lack of that opportunity, I discovered that people that were doing change things in Taani were not able to write their stories quite well. And being on screen exposes you, and people tell you, know what, I think if you take our stories to TV, it's going to be like a story of a rape case once handled through TV, like you just report it or give someone out there, it's given a limelight. I discovered that TV is actually a mass change-making platform or media. So there's something called media for development. So it's not enough to just report, but how well can I fit within a sector where it doesn't drain me so much when I go do a rescue of a child who was raped, or some lady who was hit and their family are looking for justice, or someone suffering from cancer and we have to do a fund drive. So basically, social media was there for that. So the more I talked about the stories online, the more I got traction, and the more the stories. Actually, it's no case I've not done that I did not deliver on human rights thing. So being called here and there took me out there, and of course using now citizen journalism. It's called citizen journalism. And of course now applying the elements of media and development, and also now creating again literacy on media and writing in human rights world, in the different caucuses that people meet in, be it women human rights defenders group, be it independent human rights groups, engaging with the NGO sector. Whatever kind of writing and whatever kind of thing I do is about setting an agenda in a very journalistic manner. So I wouldn't say I don't practice it. But the push to go into the streets, at this point I would just love to call it DNA. DNA in the sense that I'm also coming to understand this is a family trait of being militant. I think my grandfather is alive in me, being that he was Mau. But besides that, let me say, where you find yourself while you're growing up socializes you in a way that you want to see a better place It can socialize you in a way that you would just want to see a better place and do nothing about it, or you want to see a better Kenya and do something about it, or you don't care about it, but when you hear about the good aspect of wanting to change things, it takes you there. I grew up reading stories about Wangari Maathai. I grew up seeing my uncle as one of the councillors wa Kitambo from Nairobi. I grew up just learning to change things. I was even a scout in school. So it's more of, this is Betty. Betty will not stand at the sight of injustices and feel okay. I think it's just simply how I'm socialized, how I grew up, and that agitation to just want to see things better. Experience of being arrested. Well, it's quite an, what do I say? You know, Kenya is coming from a time where we enjoy freedom of expression. And we have a constitution that is younger than me, but of course a bit older than what was existing there before. The love for law, for the law to be respected, for the people that gave their life for us to get where we are 57 years down the line. And even before the 57 years down the line, let's talk about 63, 64 years down the line. The differences and reading and getting the discrepancies of what could be wrong, what could be right, what went wrong where, is what I think keeps me restless. I used to be a partial change maker a long time ago. I just wanted to perhaps just plant trees and feel I've done good, or take one case and feel I've done good. A case like fundraise for cancer patients in Kayole, or rescue a girl and feel I've done okay. But there are times it gets to a point and you feel that the world you're living in right now, they are duty bearers. They are stakeholders within so many different platforms. What is wrong? In 2018, I went to Uganda I'd gone for an internship, a media and communications internship, but in an NGO. And I got to learn about how people organize and why they organize. And going to the streets is not only one thing that people can do to actually organize around an issue or agitate for an issue or call for justice around an issue, but there's so many other ways in which we can do it. But in campus, I also learned that protests, or rather demonstrations, it's like the language of Kenyans. That if you do not, even in campus, if we did not stop at writing letters to the administration, then until we protested was when things moved. So what is with the goodwill? What is with the lack of goodwill? Is it about force? Because I love to be calm in my normal life, have a bit of fun here and there, but I hate to be stolen into injustices. I hate to feel as if things are not okay because this and this person did not do this. So that is how we got at the Red Vest movement. I convened the Red Vest movement. It has several other conveners. And the Red Vest movement is a movement for all in a way that it's about the citizens. Because it was formed about the citizens, and the citizens came together to form it. Just ordinary people. Why? Because there was a time in Kenya in 2019, for 3 consecutive weeks, besides being a grassroots human rights activist down there, for 3 consecutive weeks, there was corruption cases, day in, day out, day in, day out. And then you look at duty bearers and the laxity they had then. And I was in Ethiopia. And I felt this is not right. So I called a few people and I told them, do you think whatever is happening in Kenya is okay? Every other single day, there's corruption. And I'm not seeing much of us human rights convening and doing anything about it. Not to say we wanted to be reactionary because corruption is happening, but we also read about illicit financial flows. Things I got in the media, in the media world, research and all those things. You get a lot of information and you think it's time to actually do something. And if Wangari Maathai actually did it, then who am I not to do it? So also going to Uganda and learning about Wangari Maathai and how well she inspires the Ugandans, because I remember we were taught movement building by Solidarity Uganda with her film and so many other films of like the Liberian women and how they brought change in their country. Mahatma Gandhi and the Salt March. There was Martin Luther King again. A film I watched again in campus. Then there was my other love for just watching film. There's Ross Kemp and everything he has talked about Africa. There's books, of course. I just can't settle like that. Yeah, the Red Vest movement, its intention even to date is to inform Kenyans about this is happening, what is happening, corruption. This injustice is happening. Why? Because one, governance, political indecency, and to call out the economic vagaries that go on in this country. Why economic? Kenyans have moved from a state of independence and land and freedoms and all other freedoms. But I imagine a moment where we have nothing else to eat but ourselves. We have nothing else to do but survive on our own means, and within the survival mechanism, support mechanism that Wangari Maathai talks about in one of her books and in her film Taking Root. So it's time that gave birth to the Red Vest movement. It was about time that the Red Vest movement got born. Why? Because for a long time things are not going on okay in the country. So it's a national movement. But it's also again about the issues of what is happening where. In Turkana, for instance, the issue is on economics and water, availability of water. In Nairobi, the issue is water. In Mombasa, there's another different issue. In Tarbo, there's an issue about relief fund on health, diabetes, medicine, such kind of things. So bring together those different leaders in different places and ask them to take the civil way of handling things, civil disobedience or civil obedience. Now, according to our human rights side, it's called civil obedience because you have a civil responsibility to the country. So if I really love this country and if you love this country, then what problems are bringing us together? It's the economics. If you can't wake up in the morning and, like you used to afford breakfast, mid-morning and lunch, a full day meal, and you can't, then it was time guys actually asked themselves what is happening, what is different, what is unsustainable. Did we educate people to a certain level and we are not able to sustain ourselves? Did we live mashambani in an extent that we're not able to farm and actually contribute to a national food basket? So it's a nationalistic movement on specifically the economics, not just the corruption of the country, but to also be able to hold duty bearers to account. Yes.
So what do you think is the main problem in this country?
The main problem in this country is lack of goodwill to do the right thing. And the right thing is, first of all, give people sustainable livelihoods. That is on matters on dignity, Article 43 of the Constitution. Anything on Article 43 of the Constitution is wrong in this country. Then sovereignty of the people, the freedom of the people is not respected. Because if you respected a people, if you respected their freeness, then you will be thinking first about how the hospitals should have medicines. How some 2 years back, patients suffering from cancer will not be lining in the queues in Kenyatta some years back before some order was brought in Kenyatta. I mean, everyone is depreciated in Kenya, pocket-wise. People are well learned in Kenya. There's a fraction of those who are not, but they're also street smart. Or we are quite diverse with very rich counties, but the greed by the elite, by the people in power, by those first-time MPs who want to get to parliament and have that get-rich mentality quick is actually what is making Kenya lose itself. It's the population of Kenyans. It's a fraction of Kenyans in its demographics. The youth after 2002 who do not know anything about what happens in Kenya. All they hear about is Firinda and how Firinda has gone viral. These people have a disinterest in their constitution and they only interact with their constitution in school or in campus because they have to go through a common unit like ethics. There is simply the detachment of humanity and the sense of humanity on its own people. And now the worst bit is when we politicize that. So if a country cannot feed its own people, if a country cannot live for its own people, then what are we doing in Kenya? Why should the national debt be skyrocketing to 7 point by even before you get to 2022. There's a problem in Kenya, and that problem is about the rich and the poor. I do not want to propagate a narrative, and I do not wish to propagate a narrative. But coming from a point of information, from a point of schooling myself and well reading and looking into the dynamics, the illicit financial flows, and the information that is already existing there outside in the media. Everything about Kenya, and not just Kenya, East Africa, Africa, is about black people supporting a system of top elites against the poor. I think we're in the times when JM said in some years to come, there are going to be 20 millionaires, and we are in those times. Why? Because there is just something about greed, there's just something about humanity. It's just something about Kenyans being better Kenyans than others, and them feeling better than others. And then also the politicizing of it. Getting arrested it's part of lawlessness and disrespect of Katiba. Because someone is seeing me do the right thing. What is the right thing? Going to the streets to protest. It's a privilege. It's a right.
Of Nairobi to protest corruption.
Isn't that in the Bill of Rights? Okay.
This is in the Bill of Rights and the sovereignty of the people in chapter 1 of the Constitution. Yes, my rights are being violated.
Are they arresting you because you are a lady, or you are the only person
I'm
here?
being arrested because I'm afraid.
I do not love to debate with from Article 37 of the Constitution. In one of the videos or instances, I actually quote it. It gives me power to go to the streets to do what I want, to go yell, to go have a sit-in for as long as my message gets there. When if I march to State House to call on a duty bearer, it's part of going to the streets, and it's enshrined in the Constitution. There is also the misunderstanding of the public order management thing, and of course how from 2019 lawmakers have been trying to tweak that law. For what? To come and further suppress dissenting voices. If we do not have a human rights world, if we didn't have this, the slight of law, respect for law and order, respect for human rights, then what kind of a society could we be living in? We're quite cosmopolitan. We're quite in the present days where we do not respect our customs and culture, and even our customs, some of them are outdated. Yeah. So what kind of a country could we be living in? So the right to protest is a right like any other right. Right to dignity, Article 43. Right to employment in Article 51 all the way to 54. There are rights of arrested persons. That is a right. And there shouldn't be a debate on how one goes to the streets or not. So for me, it doesn't deter me. It doesn't pull me back. And I'll do it again. And I'll do it again if I have the opportunity. And if I'm doing it for the right thing. Kenyans need to be deliberate about what they want. I think Kenya is going through some kind of a self-actualization stage. But we can't self-actualize if we're not looking back from where we came. Looking back from where we came from is looking at inequalities. What inequalities? Inequalities are this moment that are coming in between the economics of the land and the wellness of the people. There's the issue of land, and it's long left in the TJRC reports. There's a history of equality on matters of marginalization in marginalized areas. There's the issue of gaps on information and education. If we could make the laws of Kenya work for us, the existing laws, not even attempt to change them, anything in that constitution will work for Kenyans. So anything that Kenyans need to do is in that constitution. And number one is to be deliberate about how we pass on our education system and values. If we want a better leader, like for instance, someone to work on your roads. The other day I was in Nyandara for Kimathi holidays. Not Kimathi holiday, but Kimathi celebrations, on some research. And what I see there are roads from what we told the county that feeds people in Easter and December. So if Kenyans could be deliberate and have a paradigm shift on how they elect people, because that's where everything else begins. Going to the street is one thing, but also being part of the policy and policy making is another thing. And also going to work is another thing for you, who your work is going to work. But also being deliberate on a national vision. And a national vision is mentoring our own leaders from down here, not waiting for political parties or political persons, political hogs, people all in political systems to come and ordain for us leaders. It should come from bottom up, because that's where people power is. That is what Article 1 of the Constitution talks about. All the power belongs to the people. That is what UDHR talks about, Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So I wouldn't want to split Kenya's problems into politics, into socioeconomics, into what? Because human rights has its own classifications. There are 3 classifications. Socioeconomics, there's first generation rights about individuals, and there's also group rights. I wouldn't want to clamp up Kenyans' issues in those. I also want to ask about the environment. Are you breathing clean air? Why are you not breathing clean air? So to look in the inside and come out to the outside. I've been doing lots of reflections, of course, because activism comes also with its own demerits. When you're all constantly taking in information about injustices, someone got hit somewhere, someone got killed somewhere, and it's time to talk about extrajudicial killings, or someone was killed somewhere, it's time to talk about femicide. All that thing is detrimental to my health. So I've been taking a lot of time to actually think about my child as well. And that means that you can't change much if you are not also looking on the inside. So before Kenyans can devise their own solutions and problems, Kenyans need to stop and think. Think about the crisis on public debt, think about taxes, that they are going to service those taxes and those debts, and also think about that person, if I can't go for that elective position, who I will elect, is it a person who's going to serve me, or is it time? Because there's a conversation that is quite outdated in Kenya. It's the conversation about bribery. It's the conversation about people going to vote. People are saying they won't go vote. It's called apathy. People are saying they won't go vote. Why are they saying they won't go vote? Because they are actually conscious about their human rights. So with the human rights consciousness that we've created over time, that persons with all due respect that have come before me, respect to them, and I bow down to them, the kind of propagation on human rights, knowledge and awareness that people can come out and call out a policeman getting, bribed somewhere, is the kind of confidence Kenyans needs to have on themselves. Kenya needs to have a conversation with themselves. Kenya need to decide that is it time we shift, and look at leaders proportionate to its demographics. Proportionate in what sense? Will the youth get youthful leaders, but with brains? Not a matter of electing someone or having someone pushed to cabinet secretary positions, and these persons are actually not serving the interest of people, or they're arrogant. It's just time for Kenya to just mature up. Yes. And I love saying power to you. If the challenge is from deep inside, if you don't have premiums for NHIF, because it's hand to mouth, challenge yourself, do the right thing. Just mature up and do the right thing. Get someone, have them there, tell them you're going to elect you. We are so many of you, but this is what we want. So Kenyans should start having their own committees into maturing up.